Hi, welcome to another episode of Small Doses with Larcel. The 60s was a volatile period in our history. The country was dealing with the struggle for civil rights, a war in Vietnam, and women were fighting for or against Equal Rights Amendment. In 1968-69, I was the sole black child enrolled at Dalrater Elementary School in Montgomery, Alabama. I was the first black child to desegregate that school. While I was there, Mrs. Butts was a teacher at Dalrater, and riding with her was how I got to school every day. Today, Mrs. Butts is my special guest, and I'm very excited to have her on the podcast. This lady is a neighbor, a friend, the mother of one of my childhood friends, and so much more. It is my honor today to interview Mrs. Betsy Butts. Thank you, Ms. Butts, for agreeing to do this interview.
I'm glad to do it with you.
Okay. Well, let's start out by you telling us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background.
Okay. I was born in Montgomery, Alabama. Lived here all my life. All my schooling has been here. And I'm one of those who went all the way through Alabama State. At that time, when I was young, they had a kindergarten.
Okay.
And it was down there where the swimming pool is today. Our teacher was Miss McGinty. We were like in a basement, and you could see out from the basement, people passing by, the college students and everything. There were about 23 of us in that class. And believe it or not, out of that 23, I think 20 of us went all the way through 12th grade together. At that particular time, Alabama State also had an elementary school, junior high, and the senior high classes. I was one of those they said they will always remember because my brother used to pass by and I could see his legs and I would call him and say, "Come get me, I want to go home." He remembered that. He said, "You would cry every time I walked by," so I wouldn't walk by. But anyway, we had very good school experience. And some of us have said it was like an early magnet school because we had regular teachers for elementary and junior high. But we also had teachers that came from the college and taught us math and science and different things. And I think out of all of us, most of us would remember Mrs. Brent. She was an English teacher, but she taught us handwriting. They taught handwriting during that time. Every child who went under Miss Brent would have a similar handwriting because she taught us basic things about writing, handwriting. And so she was someone we will always remember. I finished high school. I was 16. And at that particular time, girls didn't have jobs. There was no working in the summer. So I say, why am I wasting my summer doing nothing? So I went right on to college.
Okay.
So I started that summer, and at age 19, I came out of college.
Okay.
And believe it or not, I got my first job at 19. And I went to Daisy Lawrence.
Okay.
And that was off of, it was going down, I can't remember all the street. I think it was on Beach Street.
Now, was Daisy Lawrence integrated or segregated?
No, everything was segregated.
Okay.
And I mean in pitiful condition. It was off of Day Street, and you would go down and you would go to the Maxwell?
The air base.
Air base.
Okay.
And a lot of our children came from down in that area, very poor area. Kids didn't have much. I think everybody, when they started giving free lunches, they would get like free breakfast, free lunch, and stuff like that. It was that type of situation. And I think my first principal was Mrs. Vines, and she had been a neighbor while I was growing up. I knew all these people because my aunts taught school and one worked with her. And she was their neighbor right down Jackson Street. I lived between Grove and High Street.
Okay.
And a lot of the people I knew and the people who worked at the college lived in that area too. When I went to college, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I took up education, but my minor was in home arts because I was interested in cooking and planning and stuff like that. And like I said, I finished at 19.
Finished at 19. That is amazing. So you taught at Daisy Lawrence, and how long was it before you went to Dalreda?
I believe I was at Daisy Lawrence, if I remember correctly, maybe about 5 years.
Okay.
All schools were segregated then. There was no desegregation. They were still fighting that battle. And then one year, I can't remember the court case or whatever it was that made them do it, but they decided to put at least one black teacher in every white school. No white teachers came to black schools, but one black teacher at least in every school. And they sent 2 of us to Dalreda. And the other teacher didn't stay long. I think she applied for another job and she didn't stay there long.
I thought I remember 2 black teachers when I was there.
She was only there for a while. You may know her. Her name was Arzell. Believe it or not, she lives over there in Norwood. She and her husband, Benny, work with the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay.
But one of your questions mentioned something about how many black teachers were there.
Right.
None. There were 2 black faces on that campus, and both of them were the maids there.
Okay.
Those were the only 2. And I guess I didn't have any thoughts of being scared because I had been in what I kind of considered a privileged going to school area.
Okay.
And I had just as good an education as some of those who were working at Dalreda, although they thought they knew more than you knew because they were white.
Right.
And we were black. And it was a funny situation because when I first met my principal, it was funny. She said, "You're going to have maybe a hard time with 2 or 3 of these teachers." She said, "They are very, very strict on their beliefs about things." And I say, when I was growing up, Miss Dowdy, I said, my mom always told me you can get along with anybody you don't have to live with.
That's right.
And I said, I don't live with them. I'll come in every morning, I speak, go to my room, do my job, and that'll be it. She said, well, you probably won't have any trouble.
Wow. One of my questions was a little bit off because I wasn't paying attention to the dates. I think I told you to ask you about what was the atmosphere like when MLK was murdered. Mm-hmm. But that happened before I got to Dalreda. That was the year before I got to Dalreda. Yes. So I was like, so she didn't get to experience that at Dalreda. So I would venture to say you were still in a safe zone with right. Other people, other black people when we had to go through that. Because right. I can't imagine what it would have been like to have been a black teacher in that environment that year that it happened. So, but it was the following year. Now, were you at Dalreda before I got to Dalreda? Or was that both of our first year?
I think I may have gone there a year before because there were no black students.
Okay, so then you were there when
I think I was there.
Assassinated.
But that didn't come up with them.
Okay.
Nobody mentioned that. And I wasn't over talking to them.
Right.
I did, like I said, I did my classes and I didn't bother with them. I worked with 2 other teachers and they told me she should be one of the hardest teachers to work with. We got along fine. She knew I liked dogs and things. She loved dogs. She ended up giving me a little dog poodle named Lucy.
Oh, is that where you got Lucy
that's
from?
That's where I got Lucy from. Lucy had attacked one of her other dogs.
Oh, and Lucy was a character.
She was. And so she said, I don't know what I'm going to do with this dog.
And that's how you.
And I said, I'll take her, and I brought her home to Yvette.
Okay.
Yvette was little at home at that time.
So, you mentioned the other day when we were talking that most of your students and their families were very kind to you. Mm-hmm. And do you think that was because they were military families that had been moving around and been exposed to different cultures?
No, believe it or not, a lot of the parents over there work for the state.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know, I guess because I've been around teachers, my thing was you get along with your students.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get along with your students, you got the mamas, because mamas want kids to be happy.
That's right.
And I didn't have any problems with their kids. And that first class I had at Del Rita, that was one of the sweetest group I've ever taught.
Wow.
And those are the ones that I remember. I can remember their names, picture their faces.
Mm.
And I may have mentioned to you one of the little girls I had in that class, Sandra Bush. Her daddy was a Shriner.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Walmart one day after I retired. And here she comes running across Walmart. She said, I heard your voice. I knew that was you, so I came to speak to you. She said, you don't remember me, do you? I said, yeah, I remember you, Sandra. And I said, I remember you baking me a Valentine's cake the first year I came to Del Rita. She said, you remember that? I said, yes, I remember that.
Oh, wow.
But I run into quite a few of them. I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Not anymore. I run into a lot of their parents, too. And they used to stop and we would talk in the store. But I think I had a pretty much good advantage to really get to know parents,
Okay.
because teaching their kids when they were in third grade, and I stayed there so long, I taught their sisters and brothers when they came along too. So I got to know the families over a long period of time.
Right. How did it happen, Miss Butts, that you took me back and forth to school? Do you know? I don't know.
Your mother and daddy knew I was going that way every day. And your mother had to go to work a little bit early so I could get you and pick you up on my way.
Okay.
And so that
was how that worked.
I only took you. I took Maria too.
The next year, no, not the next year, because the next year I went to school with Maria, so it was a couple years later. Right.
Yeah, I took her too.
Yeah. So Ronnie, your son, her son Ronnie, and I were talking the other day, and he was remembering that he and Maria were there together.
Right.
He said, well, what happened to you? Why didn't you come back? I said, it was convenience. I was just at another school. My mother could drop me off on her way to work and pick me back up.
Yeah.
So what kind of things would you say have changed while you were there? Because I know you've been retired for a while. But from the time you went to Del Rita and it was not segregated, it was segregated, to the time you went to Del Rita till you left Del Rita, what kind of changes? I know the population in the demographics changed.
A lot of things changed at Del Rita. Del Rita was a good school to work in for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it went through changes from having the couple of black teachers to begin with. The changes came about when they started sending black students to Del Rita.
Mm-hmm.
And I always had a problem with how they paired them. We got black students from this area, out here in Walt.
Mm-hmm.
These children were, I would say a lot of them were quite poor. They had never even been to town, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
They were low income. They didn't have much. The parents were kind of on the bottom end of the financial, just say that.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, when they paired them, who had nothing much.
Before I came down here, I did a little research just out of curiosity. And I thought how different the times are. What we're looking at about 50 years ago. More really, but I was the only black child at Del Rita, and right now there are about 72% minorities at that same school. So, but when I looked at the demographic of all the public schools in Montgomery, they all seem to pretty much be
about the same.
So it looks as if we're going back into segregation.
I think a lot of parents sent their kids to private school.
They did.
In fact, we had some teachers when they retired went to private school and taught. after they retired from Alabama.
That's a topic I've done on my show before when I covered topics like white flight, but we're not going to go into the white flight today. But it's definitely a thing that we see that's happening in these communities, and then less and less money goes into the schools, and so. But was there any other interesting thing about you one interesting thing about you going to Lab High at Alabama State? I also was taught by Miss McGinty.
Really?
Yes, when you said that I was about to pop, I was like, me too. And I do remember the little basement, and you could see the legs. So yes, Miss McGinty was my kindergarten.
She was the sweetest teacher. I think she sent every one of us cards when we graduated.
Wow. I was just looking at a picture the other day of our graduation. Somebody sent it to me on Facebook and said, "Is this you?" In fact, it was, I don't know if you remember the mentors, Bill Mentor.
Yes.
It was his sister Valda. Yes. She sent the picture.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was sitting here going, oh my gosh, I didn't know Lab High had been here that long. So,
yes.
But isn't it wonderful that you were such a young student, and now when you see 16-year-olds going to college, everybody makes such a big deal about it. But I think that was very common in the Black community.
I think it was because of the birthday. They let me go. My birthday was September 30th. October 1st was the cutoff date. They really should have kept me back. But they let me go.
Because you was smoking, girl. You was
They let me go. And, that's why it happened that way.
Okay. Okay. But I was about to pop out of my seat. I was like, oh, she said Miss McGinty. That was my teacher, too. So that's a small world. So this has been interesting fact gathering. I mentioned to you I have run across other people who I actually went to school with at Dalrata. And one young lady thought I was snubbing her because I didn't know her. And I had to remind them it was one me. And it was a whole lot of y'all. So y'all remember the little black girl, but it was nearly impossible for a 6-year-old to remember all the white kids.
Right.
So it has been a interesting thing in my life that as I progress and move around and meet people in Montgomery, people remembered the little black girl, and they wanted to know what was wrong. And I was like, no, everything was fine. It was just a matter of convenience. I had to go to school at a different place because the family had to do what they had to do to move around. So, yes, but this has been interesting. It's been on my mind and my heart for some time. And then COVID came right when I was getting ready to do it. And I was like, oh, COVID's here. I can't go down there now. So I'm so glad you took time out of your day today to talk to me about this. It kind of makes me get a little emotional because here we are, historical figures. We're hidden figures, and nobody knows about the little things. And this was not just happening in Montgomery. This was happening in other communities that we have the groundbreaking black teachers who went in, but there were no groundbreaking white teachers who went to our school.
None with that.
So it is.
It was a while before they started sending.
Yeah, it was a while. So this has been interesting. So if you got anything from Small Doses today, you've learned a little history. You learned that there was an elementary school, a kindergarten at Alabama State University, and both of us are products from that establishment. So this has been great. And join us next time for another dose of Small Doses with Larcel.